Hi all, hopefully you can hear and see me. Please drop a message in the chat box if you're experiencing any technical difficulties. Just a quick intro from me. Most, if not all on the call should know me, but I am your account manager at Kick ICT, and I will be assisting Charlotte, who's also going to be speaking today and doing most of the talking. She's from Pegasus, and she's going to be going into detail on the functionality that comes with the AP automation tool that you'll all have access to, and how it integrates with your Opera platform. And so, yeah, I'll just sit in the background. I'm about to switch over to her, but just a bit of housekeeping. This has been recorded, so if you have to switch off at any time, it will get sent over to you after this, and along with the slides. And yes, so if you've got any questions, please use the chat box and we'll cover them off at the end during the Q&A. But yes, I'll hand over to you now, Charlotte, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. Thanks, Kirsty.
Right.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join today's session, as Kirsty said, looking at the POP approvals and accounts payable automation for Opera. So a quick overview of the agenda for today's session. I'll provide you with a bit of an overview of AP automation with Opera. We'll go through how you can save time and paper when adopting AI invoice processing. We'll then look at the phase 2 solution, which is looking at the POP approvals and invoice matching. And we'll then touch on how you can take control of indirect and non-stock spend with features around integrated online buying. I will be providing you with a live demonstration of POP approvals and AP automation end to end. And then finally, we have set aside some time at the end of the session for a Q&A where we'll be able to respond to any questions that you ask throughout. So as Kirsty said, just add these to the chat box. Okay, so I'll start with a bit of a refresher for those of you that have seen this before, or an introduction for those that haven't, about how the AP automation solution works alongside Pegasus Opera. So the goal of AP automation is really to resolve the key challenges that you may be experiencing with a traditional manual accounts payable process. So that might be keying in invoice data, time-consuming coding, the pain of reconciling invoices against orders if those are being raised, and then also chasing invoices for approval. So you can start your accounts payable automation journey simply by emailing all invoices to a unique e-invoicing email address. Any invoice format can be sent, whether that's a PDF, a Word document, Excel, scanned paper, invoices. If they've got multiple pages, if they're in different languages or currencies, they're all supported and will be processed. The software then captures the header and line item data from your invoices, which is powered by AI technology. So that's completely removing the need to do any manual data entry and key those invoices into Opera. The software will also automatically perform duplicate invoice checking and supplier bank detail validation. So all looking to reduce risk and increase productivity alongside other features such as default analysis coding, and automated matching against purchase orders where applicable. Invoices can then be routed on a multi-tiered and dynamic approval workflow. That could be based on any supply codes you're using, any cost centers or departments, the suppliers themselves, and also value thresholds to meet your organization's approval control needs. And then once invoices have been approved, the invoice record is automatically created in the purchase ledger in Opera for you. So streamlining that end-to-end process with an easy to access link back to a copy of the original PDF of the invoice within AP automation should you need it. So the goal is to allow your organization to firstly remove 100% of paper from your current process, alleviating any storage costs and considerations, and making things such as audit more straightforward with access to all of those invoices in one centralized place. It also puts businesses in a good stead for the government's 2029 mandate, when it will be mandatory for all businesses to use e-invoicing for all VAT invoices. It will save staff significant time processing and storing invoices, managing queries and chasing approvals, reduce your business's risk level by automating further checks and validations, including that duplicate invoice checking and bank detail validation I touched on, essential for preventing fraud. And then with dynamic approval workflows and approver alerts and nudges, ensuring that your authorization routes are complied with, that you've got full visibility, and it's also quick and easy to approve on any device whilst providing commentary. So what we'll look at now is how the POP approvals and AP automation process works alongside each other. So it starts when a user raises a purchase request directly in Opera. This can include the item, supplier, expected cost, etc. And then that request is then automatically routed for approval via the approval workflow that sits within AP automation. And that's based on your organization's predefined rules. Again, as I touched on, supply code, department value, for example. Approvers can be notified instantly via email, and they can review and approve that request within AP automation from any browser on any device. They'll be able to see all the key information so that they can make an informed decision about approving that request very quickly. And then once approved, that request is converted into a purchase order, and the PO is issued automatically out to the supplier. So that's ensuring that your spend is being approved and validated up front. It gives finance visibility and control as well before any money's actually been committed. It's a really fast and reliable way to control spend from the beginning of the process. Then, as you'll see here, once that invoice is then received, it's automatically validated, the data is extracted, and it's matched back to the purchase order. And if matching, it can be approved automatically too, which is when your invoice is then posted, ready to pay from Opera. So when we look at integrated online buying, it's a very similar journey when we're looking at non-stock online suppliers that you may be buying from and maybe not raising orders for today. So you can integrate that directly into AP automation with the ability to generate purchase order requests directly from online shopping baskets on those supplier websites and pull those through into AP automation for that exact same process. So summarizing some of those core benefits of automating all things purchase to pay with Opera and our AP automation extension. So looking at the top left, the ability to seamlessly combine what you may already be doing with purchase order processing with the AP automation functionality. So this means that once a purchase order is approved, the system handles everything from the digital invoice capture to the automated matching back against the PO. And this significantly reduces queries in your organization by up to 70% because everything is linked and fully traceable. It's also then going to help save time and increase your visibility. So your team will be able to capture, process and reconcile invoices much faster. They'll have that real-time visibility across the full purchase to pay cycle. And that's also going to give finance and budget holders more control, fewer surprises, which is super important. Looking in the bottom right there, looking at automated purchasing across all spend types. So whether there's additional overhead and indirect spend that you want to factor in, purchase requests can be auto-generated and approved with integrated online buying from suppliers like Amazon Business. And all purchase requests can now flow through the same system with AP automation picking up the invoice side end-to-end as well. And then finally, that streamlining of the approval process. So purchase requests and invoices can be routed for approval on any device, as I've already mentioned. Workflows designed around your organization's need. And the feedback is that it's reducing approval times by up to 73%, so making the whole process more efficient. So really together, these four pillars are looking to deliver full control, visibility and efficiency from requisition all the way through to payment. So with that in mind, I will now look to jump through into a demonstration for you. So I'll start by just providing a brief overview of how this can be set up and configured within Opera, and it can be done on a per supplier basis. So if I start by looking at my suppliers under financials, so for example, if I select one of my suppliers that I know does not yet have this enabled, and go through to actions. Orders. And then this is where we can enable it. So we can very quickly configure that actually we'd like to enable APA ordering for this supplier. What that means is that when you create that request in Opera, it's then going to be synced through to AP automation to go through that approval workflow and authorization route. So I'll leave it off there. We'll just jump back to our first supplier. And you can see if I go into orders for this supplier that APA ordering has already been enabled. So what I'll do now is go through to create a new purchase order. So if I go into processing, now you'll see what we have here within POP is this new column, which is APA status. So because APA ordering has been enabled for this supplier, we can see all the different statuses available to us. So going all the way down to the bottom, submitted, for example, means that it's in the process of being sent out to AP automation. While it's in the submitted state, if I go to AP automation here, I can recall it. So if I've changed my mind and I no longer want to issue that order, that request out for authorization, I can pull it back. Once it moves from submitted, the next status it will go to is awaiting approval. So that's letting us know that this order is now sat within the AP automation extension. It's with the approver or approvers for authorization. Once it's been approved within AP automation, it will then pull back the information to confirm that actually that's been approved and therefore issued out to the supplier. So let's go ahead and create a new order within Opera. So we'll select our header detail, things such as the warehouse, as standard. And then there's a new property that you'll see here, which is the required field. That's simply a date field that's required for AP automation. So I can just select today's date for ease and then start to build out my order. So I've got some stock items that I'll choose from. So I can just start to build this out. And then once I'm happy with my line item information, I can click OK. And then we have a new pop-up, which is just letting me or asking me to confirm if I'm comfortable that I'd like to submit this order for approval within AP automation. It's reminding me that submitted orders can't be edited and therefore must be recalled for any amendments to be made. And so, yeah, I want to continue. And I'll go ahead and publish that. Let's pull these down, get that sent through. And you can see that purchase order request is now sat here with an APA status of submitted. So what I'll do now is pop through into the AP automation solution. So I'm just going to log in. And the view that your users have within AP automation will depend on the permissions that you've allocated to them and what's relevant and valuable to their role. But if I go into the orders area of AP automation and go into our submitted tray, this gives me oversight of the requests that have either been raised in AP automation or linked through from POP in Opera and are currently out in my organization for approval. So I can see this request and I can also see who that current approver is. So what I'm going to do is quickly log off and log in as one of our approval users. The approver's experience, if you have them configured, is they'll receive an email notification. There's a link in that email that they can click in to log in to AP automation to go through the approval step. If an email per request is a bit much, you can instead configure an approver's daily report. So they'll receive one email a day, which summarizes the transactions awaiting their approval. But this approver in this case is going to go in to their orders area of the system. And the first tray that an approver will have is the awaiting approvals tray. If I look at the top here, I can click into this request. And as an approver, I can see all the information that's related to that request. So the items that have been added, obviously our costs and quantities, any coding that's been allocated as well. If I click through to documents and timeline, for every transaction that goes through AP automation, an audit trail is built out automatically for you. So you can see which user submitted it, the date and time of that request, and when it arrived in AP automation, and any approval steps that have already been carried out if you do have a multi tiered or multi-step approval process. I can also see where it may go next. So this is still in draft, it's still a request, it's not yet an order. And then either from this screen or from this screen, I've got these two very simple options to approve or deny. If I deny, I do so with comment. In this case, that will update the order within purchase order processing to say that it's been denied and the comment as to why. For today's demonstration, I'll just go ahead and click to approve. And I can add my commentary just here if I want to and just say this is fine by me. Click to approve. And that will then progress that request through the rest of the approval workflow if there are additional approvers that need oversight of that request. Or it will land in our approved tray within AP Automation, updating the purchase order in Opera to approved. And if I click into this order, now when I go through to our timeline, we've got that completed audit trail. So we can see the approval, date and timestamp and the commentary that was allocated. I can see that it's been successfully issued out to our supplier, to their specific email address on this date and time. And then on the left-hand side here is the actual purchase order PDF that's automatically generated by the AP automation system as well. This is customizable to a point in terms of your company logos, brand colors. If you need to attach terms and conditions as supporting documents when you issue out those orders directly to your suppliers, you can do so as well. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to log back in as our main user and just hop into a configuration for a moment and just look at that workflow piece in a bit more detail. So when we talk about workflows, we're really just talking about the routing of transactions for approval. Within AP automation, that's your requests or that's your invoices. If I go into our orders workflow, just as an example, you can, of course, have multiple positions. So the concept of it going to an approver and then onto another one and onto another. We've also got the concept of being able to create what would be here a simultaneous or parallel approval, whereby multiple people would have oversight and receive notification of the transaction for approval at the same time to effectively approve their portion and then progress the request, if we're talking about requests, through the rest of the workflow. The reason that's really valuable is because you can look to build out criteria against individual steps in the workflow. So if you have an individual that looks after a particular project or a particular subset of supply codes, for example, we can create these rule sets and conditions where I say, well, if the supplier is equal to or is in a range of XYZ, and I can build out those rules. The reason the rules are really valuable is because if a transaction comes through this workflow where one of those rule sets does not apply, the system will automatically and dynamically route that transaction through the rest of the workflow. So really useful feature. You can also create an approval group whereby you add multiple users within one step in the workflow. That's effectively a first come, first serve approval. Whoever gets there first has the authorization to approve and progress it on through the rest of the process. And then also, of course, we have the concept of a value-based approval. So that delegation of authority style approval. Within AP automation, it's if the net value of the transaction is X or above, then this user would need to see it. So in this case, anything under 5,000 wouldn't make it to this high value approver. Anything over would come to them. And you can have multiple levels of value-based approvals and authorizations as needed as well. Okay, so what I will move on to now is just looking at how those invoices come into AP automation. So we talked about in my presentation how we get those into the system. It's a very simple email process. Those invoices go through the data extraction process and then are delivered down into AP automation for review. Within the invoices area, the first tray that we have is the unprocessed tray. This is the first place that you may see your invoices once they've gone through the data extraction. And the first thing that's automatically allocated against the invoice is a matching status. Matching is based on a header level value. So that's the supplier, the purchase order number, and the overall value of the invoice against the original order. A part match is where the invoice value is less. An overmatch is where the invoice value is more. If, for example, you do have invoices that are direct non-PO invoices, they can absolutely be processed through AP automation in isolation. That's not a problem. But if, for example, we know that we do raise orders for this particular supplier and potentially the supplier's just forgotten to put the PO number on the invoice, I can very quickly go in, And I can look to find any open POs associated to that supplier and carry out that match so that I can get that invoice processed nice and quickly. What I'll do is just jump into our invoice at the top here. And when we're looking at invoices within AP Automation, we get a summary of the header information. I can quickly sense check the actual purchase order that was created for this particular cost. I can see the matching status. I would be able to see here if bank detail validation had been automatically carried out for me. And then I can look at the line items. If I tab here, I can see the invoice itself. So you've always got visibility of the invoice document. I can see the line item information that's been extracted and all of the coding that's been allocated. So typically what we see is that if an invoice comes in and matches an approved purchase order, that the invoice would inherit the coding from the order and can be processed. If it's a direct invoice, you can also allocate defaults within AP Automation in terms of how those invoices are coded. Or, of course, a user can manually interact with the codes that are being synced through from Opera and allocate those codes against the transactions as need be. If I click on related transactions at the bottom, again, you can match multiple invoices back against the single order as well. So they would be flagged as part matches, but what you would see here is a summary of those transactions and also a quick sense check on the outstanding balance on that order. If I click through to edit, I can also have oversight of the data in a slightly different way. I can drill down into each individual line. If for any reason you need to split out a single invoice line to allocate it to different cost centers, then you can absolutely do that and make that adjustment to the line costs. The system will always sense check that any lines equal the header that's been captured, which has been captured off the document and is a fixed total. Otherwise, from here, the AP user, the finance team, would then look to submit this through an approval workflow in the same way. You may also determine that actually you want to create a rule set whereby if an invoice comes in, it fully matches an approved order and all the coding is populated, it doesn't need to drop into unprocessed for AP to interact with. It can actually just go directly for approval, or it can go directly for posting back into Opera. Once invoices are submitted for approval, the finance team, AP team will have visibility of those within this submitted tray. I won't go through an invoice approval because it looks exactly the same in terms of access to the document, the data, the coding, any authorizations from a timeline point of view, and then the user would just select to approve or deny. And then what you have here is our approved invoices tray, which gives you oversight of all of the invoices that have been approved and are here for visibility purposes. Once the invoice is posted through to Opera, we pull back a unique journal number, which effectively completes your audit trail. So if I go through to documents and timeline and look at this invoice, I can see that it's been automatically approved and posted through on this date and time into Opera, ready for payment processing. So just to quickly show you what the invoices look like and how that presents in Opera, if I just jump back in, I go into my supplier list. And what you'll see here, if I scroll all the way along, again, we've got another column against invoices, which is an APA reference. So it's a unique invoice number associated to the invoice that's been created automatically from AP Automation. And then also these invoices have a little flag at the bottom here, which is the AP invoice link. So if I click on this, what it will do is open up AP Automation automatically for me and open up that specific invoice. So I can see the invoice document at a quick reference and anything else related to that invoice, including the approval timeline. Okay, before I finish up, I just wanted to take you through an example of how indirect purchase requests can be raised within AP Automation as well. So I'm just going to quickly log off and log in as a different user. I touched on in the introduction in the presentation the concept of integrated online buying, which is a really useful tool for getting oversight and visibility of requests that you may not do currently. So I've got Amazon Business configured as a supplier example, but we have a number of different online suppliers that you can connect with. And the way that works is you can click out to that supplier's website from AP Automation. I can search for any items that I am looking for, start to build out my basket. And then once I'm happy with the contents of my basket, I can just go through, and instead of automatically checking out that basket on that supplier's online website, I do now have the option to submit that order for approval and effectively create a purchase request for that cost. So based on that basket information, the system will pull that detail back into AP Automation and create what we're looking at here, which is a purchase request form. Instead of it coming through from Opera, it's been created within AP Automation. Everything from that basket down to the item code and description, obviously costs and quantities have been pre-populated. And we've also got some defaults which have been automatically applied from a coding perspective. Defaults can be based on the supplier, it can be based on the user that's raising the request or the team or project they're associated to. And then from here, the user can then select from an approval workflow. So I can select to send that off for approval. From there, the authorization of the request, that process looks exactly the same as we saw in our first example. Okay. So just to finish up, what I've got to share with you here is really the real world impact of automating your purchasing and AP process. So customers tell us that they see up to a 90% reduction in manual invoice processing time using AP Automation, fewer delays, less admin. Thanks to 99.85% invoice data accuracy, AP teams handle 70% fewer queries, and with those dynamic approval workflows that I touched on as well, approvals are completed 73% faster. The cost savings are also just as impressive. Processing an invoice can now cost as little as 40 pence per invoice document compared to an industry standard value of up to £14.50 for paper-based processing. And finally, when you do connect with supplier networks like Amazon Business and use that integrated online buying functionality, customers also see 95% efficiency savings on those sorts of purchase requests. So really, this whole process is looking to add up to provide you with more control, definitely less manual effort, and real and immediate return on investment and value to your organization. Okay, we do have some time set aside now for questions. So I'll ask Kirsty if anything's come through and if there's any questions that we can answer while we've got a few moments left of the session today. But thank you for listening.
Thanks, Charlotte. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, thanks.
You can. Great. It's a bit of a nightmare not being able to see myself.
Oh, I've just seen one that's come through here. The question is, how does the system deal with invoices with multi-cost center backup, i.e. there's a PDF invoice with the total, but then a backup spreadsheet that comes with it that breaks the cost down by cost center? Okay, that's a really good question. So typically, if the front page of that is the PDF invoice, that's what the technology is going to extract the information from. If that spreadsheet could be processed in isolation, because I guess you're looking for the line items, you could send that spreadsheet on its own through as an invoice, in which case the lines would be broken down for you. Another option or a question, I suppose, back to you is if you're raising orders for those sorts of costs, then actually you can use a feature within AP Automation, which is to import order lines. So if you have broken down that cost at order stage and the supplier sends you effectively a consolidated one-line invoice, you can actually import the order lines to break that back down for you as well. So there's a few different ways that the system could look to handle that. But I hope that answered your question.
Sorry, Charlotte, I'm back.
That's okay. I
I'd
wasn't
lost
sure where you may have
the
gone.
connection. The connection had dropped. So I've
No
got
worries
one
at all.
question, just asking around the commercials, and so it's different per client. So I would suggest next steps after this is to get in touch with myself, and it'll be myself and our consultancy team, Fiona, who we can have kind of one-to-one conversations around how it would fit it into your specific environment, and then we can go from the commercials from there, if that's okay. Yeah, I've got.
Great, thanks, Kirsty.
Okay. I think that's all. I mean, unless you've got any more on your side, Charlotte.
Just another one in from Greg. How does the system allow us to provide to our auditors that invoices have been approved by the appropriate people? Another great question. That approval timeline that I demonstrated is all exportable against the order and against the invoice. So you've got visibility of that authorization that's happened against those transactions, the individuals, the date and timestamp, and any commentary that they've added. All of that is exportable out, so you can share that with your auditors. Also, some customers may choose to provide their auditors with a read-only license, so they can actually log into AP Automation and have a look at all the minutiae of detail that they may need to see, including that essential audit trail. But yes, it's all available and easy to view for your auditors.
Thanks, Charlotte. I've just got one more question that's just come in, and then we can wrap it up. But it's just around the permissions. Just saying, can we restrict who can view certain suppliers or departments, for example, confidential invoices?
Yeah, absolutely. So highly configurable in terms of security profiles and permissions, visibility of certain suppliers. If you are raising requests within AP Automation, kind of restricting that list down, but also those codes, as you say, so departments, cost centers, supply codes, any analysis that's being synced through from Opera, you can allocate users or groups of users that can only see a subset of those codes if that's what's needed.
Great. Okay, thanks, Charlotte. And thanks all for joining. Please, you know where I am if you have any questions at all. Charlotte's here as well if we want to do more one-to-one calls. That's something that we can absolutely facilitate. And yeah, I'll look to hear from you all, which would be great. And we can kind of run through how it would fit in to your organisation.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Kirsty.